All right, so today we are watching How to Fake an Entire Esports Career Without Ever Playing, the multi-year scheme of Tokyogurl. So I know I like to joke that last week when we watched Rima Evenstar, I called her female Mujin. So today we're watching male Rima, and this is an interesting story because I don't know anything about it. I haven't really followed any esports stuff in quite a while, so I don't think I've ever even heard of this. And I'm not even sure what game this is. So I'm very curious as to what this is going to be. And Mujin always makes great videos. I like his content. He very informative, so I'm excited to see that. Those of you watching on stream right now, I will be putting the link to this video in the chat. Please do support the original creator. And for those of you watching on the highlights channel, I will be leaving the link in the description. Please do support Mujin. Without him, this video would not exist. So let's just get right into it. Just a quick reminder that you're watching the highlights channel right now. If you want to catch these streams live or want to check out my more high effort analytical content, consider checking out the main channel linked in the description.
Order to fake a life that... How far would you be willing to go in order to fake a life that isn't yours? In today's world, this is a question worth asking. Because let's face it, there's too many people out there renting a sports car for a day, pretending that it's theirs.
Yeah, I mean, that is a thing, but also a lot of the people who do that use it to make more money. They use it to essentially grift their following by, saying, giving them like bad financial advice, saying, hey, give me your money, I'll teach you how to make this kind of money. But they're exaggerating their own financial situation.
And God, if I see another guru on a tropical island claiming that they made it because they did a few stock trades, then I might just burst a testicle. It takes common sense to understand that these people are using credit cards. This, of course, is all done in the hopes of trying to impress others. And while yes, it is pathetic, ridiculous even, it is done on a wide scale these days. I mean, this has gotten so big that there's an entire economy built around fake influencers.
Yeah, and that is an interesting question. It depends, I think, a lot on what the events are and also what the game is, what the scenario is, because I mean, if you think of something like speedrunning, there are people who, especially since COVID has made live events still kind of that people stream from their home, there have been a number of people who have been able to do stuff on their own computers to fake things in speedrunning. They do often get called out when they do that, but I don't know. It depends on the context. I'm sure Mujin is going to get into it, but I'm curious. Because it is hard to fake real skill when you don't have a chance to kind of portray something else. Like with, good example would be with Elon Musk, how he pretended to be like a top Path of Exile 2 player. And then when he actually played live on stream, he didn't really know what he was doing. So
people who rent out mansions, sports cars, photographers, you name it, all in the hopes of appearing to be something that they are not. However, even though we've gotten to a point where this has gotten worryingly sophisticated, with an entire economy built around it, all of this still pales in comparison to the fake life that esports athlete Nafat Warasin has lived for the last few years.
Yeah, and that's also interesting. I've noticed that lately because there are high-level women in esports, or not so much. I mean, it is a very male-dominated space. But there are women who are really good at playing various video games. Like, it's not that they can't do it. Something about my suspicion is that a lot of it comes down to you need like a really hyper fixated focus and dedication and a way to kind of sacrifice everything else in your life to be a top level esports player. And that mindset is just far more common in men than in women, because even as far as like men tend to operate more on the extremes of things than women do, where they're basically, if you look at like intelligence, they're with both geniuses and morons. Men kind of operate. There are more male geniuses and male morons than there are women on either side of the spectrum. So I imagine it's kind of the same thing with esports, where to have that kind of hyper autistic mindset is more common in men. Even though, of course, there are women who are very good at video games. But I've noticed that every time it seems like some female team or a woman or an all-woman team gets really pushed, a lot of it is very artificial. Like big example was in League of Legends. There's a team called Vey Victus, who was an all-female League of Legends team, and they lost every match they ever played, oftentimes catastrophically. Like, I think over the course of their career, they were able to take like one tower from an enemy. So which is, that's crazy because in general in that game, the first row of towers is kind of supposed to go down on both sides, but it was because not that they weren't able to play, like they apparently knew what they were doing, as far as, but they just weren't at the professional level, and they were artificially placed above their capabilities because they could play at a decently high level on their own. They just didn't have the skills to play at the professional level. So I feel like a lot of it is not that women are bad at video games, it's just that a lot of the big names that you hear about get pushed because of the novelty of them being a high-level woman, which is just less common in esports. So a lot of times that tends to make them look worse than they are because they're placed outside of their capabilities.
An absolute rising star in one of Southeast Asia's most popular games, she managed to get signed to one of the top esports organizations of the region, which eventually led her to the highest honor imaginable.
And that's actually also a thing where, honestly, if you could play at any popular competitive game at a really, really high level and you're a woman, there are prospects for you, because the novelty of being one of the best players and also being a woman, because so many of the best players are men, that is like perfect marketing material. There's a lot they can do to make money, so they'll be, if you genuinely have the skills to back it up, organizations will snap you up.
Representing her country of Thailand in the 2025 Southeast Asia Games. Now,
I want to know what game it is.
Admittedly, throughout all this time, she definitely had some suspicious behavior. There were definitely some doubts in regards to her avoided nature, but her teammates attributed that to maybe her being awkward, to maybe being nervous. You see, no one on her top team throughout so many hours playing with her.
And I will say another slight red flag is that she seems to be oftentimes in a team of women where, again, there are great women players of every game out there. When you have an all-female team, that comes across as kind of a gimmick. And when it's a gimmick, a lot of times these teams get pushed to higher levels than they're really capable of, which is a shame, even if some of the individuals might actually have a real place in the top leagues. They're almost kind of getting dragged down by the gimmick.
Could have ever guessed that her entire esports career has been nothing but fake. And no one could have even begun to come to the conclusion that for all this time, she wasn't even the one playing. What's even worse here is that this only got exposed after she had gotten on the Thailand national team and during an extremely important game between Thailand and Vietnam, which would have led this team to the finals.
That is fucking crazy. I don't understand how this wasn't caught ahead of time, because they have training, they have like practice, they play with one another, not just for honing their own skills, but also to make sure they're collaborating as a team, they're communicating, that they kind of have the flow of each other. I don't know if somebody else was playing the entire time. How the fuck did they not catch it at the organization level? I can understand her getting onto the organization through bullshit means. That is believable to me. But the fact that they could actually train with her and see her play in real time, and they'll usually have somebody in the room with you while you're playing, and you're not playing on your own hardware, because they want to see how you play and see if there's anything you are doing that could be improved. That actually says almost less about her, even though, yeah, that's something you got to have kind of balls and skewed morals to be able to actually do this thing in the first place. But that shows an extreme level of incompetence from her organization that they weren't able to catch this ahead of time. Although, also, it's interesting. So it looks like it's a mobile game they're playing. Okay, Mujin hasn't said what the game is, so I'm curious.
Yes, she was actually caught red-handed live on stream during the semifinals of a competition that is the equivalent of
Arena
the
of
Olympics
Valor. I don't
of
know that game.
Southeast Asia. Guys, I can't even begin to explain to you the secondhand embarrassment.
Thai esports athlete expelled from SEA games for cheating during Arena of Valor match. Napat Warasin, known in the Thai gaming community as Tokyogurl, has already drawn online flack for showing a vulgar hand sign during the live stream. I wonder if they're going to show that, because it doesn't look like they're showing that in this image.
I mean, this was so humiliating. Not just for her, though, not just for her teammates, but for the entire country of Thailand.
Okay, and so part of me is thinking, if she didn't get caught and it's a mobile game, was she possibly using her own device during training? Because, like, part of me can understand why they would do that, just because it's so portable, it's easy to do that. But still, I feel like if you're an esports org with a mobile game division, you would have company machines that you would use. Specifically just so you can have a baseline and avoid situations like this, but also just, you know, what everybody is working with.
If you thought this was bad,
Also, actually, come to think of it, there would be security reasons for that as well, where you wouldn't want to have somebody have their own private stuff, because if their device is compromised, that could cause problems. And welcome back, Alan. We are watching a video by male Rima, otherwise known as Mujin, about esports player Tokyogurl, who apparently faked everything. So I'm curious.
Wait till you hear who was the person that was playing remotely for her during her entire career. We only recently got confirmation in the beginning of 2026, and it's one hell of a way to start the year. Look, when I saw this, I thought it was so ridiculous. We had to talk about it. So you already know the drill. Without further ado, let's do this.
The game is Arena of Valor. I don't know the game myself, so I don't really know anything about it. But I imagine he'll explain it in a way that will make sense if you're not familiar with the game, which I am not.
All right, so to fully grasp what's going on, we have to go all the way back to the year 2011, when Tencent would purchase Riot Games. This move was unprecedented and cost around $350 million. They were willing to make this bet because they understood how big the MOBA market was becoming. But more importantly, they were also understanding just how quickly the mobile market was becoming.
Okay, that seems like it might have been a slight editing error. But I'm trying to think, was Riot really doing anything on mobile back in 2011? Because I know nowadays they do have Teamfight Tactics, and I think they have a mobile version of League of Legends now, or at least the console version that might be accessible on mobile. But at the time, were they really doing it? Because the way I understood it is Tencent was buying Riot less for the actual tech infrastructure they have, but more for the intellectual property of League of Legends. So I don't know.
Nearly 2 years prior, Angry Birds had come out, and a year later, Candy Crush would come out, and these games would generate billions upon billions of dollars. Soon developers would stop looking at PC and console and just focus on mobile because it was a cash cow, an absolute money printing machine, and it changed gaming forever.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. The big thing about mobile games is that it's one of the only avenues for gaming that can be marketed to people who are not gamers, because everybody has a phone in their pocket, and nowadays the overwhelming majority of cell phones are smartphones. And even if you're not a gamer, there is an appeal to having a game so you can kill a couple of minutes while you're taking a shit, or while you're waiting for the doctor, or while you're riding the bus, that kind of thing. So that does, the attitudes between those types of people and the general gaming market are a little different. That's why the average person is a little more susceptible to microtransactions than a hardcore gamer would be, because people just don't care about the integrity of the game as much if you're not invested into the industry. So yeah, and mobile games are kind of where the microtransaction boom really took off, because back in the day, Candy Crush was the big one where you could pay for extra lives or for a little boost to beat a hard level, and they were making just crazy money for the time.
By 2015, Tencent's leadership team truly wanted to work with Riot Games to make a mobile version of League of Legends.
Okay,
but no
that
matter
makes
what
sense.
Tencent did, no matter how many pitches they made, no matter how much revenue they started talking about, Riot Games leadership wouldn't budge. They truly believed that the experience that PC offered could never be replicated on mobile. But Tencent
Yeah.
wasn't
And I will say, in general, I don't really play League of Legends. I used to, but you would have to make significant concessions on mobile or change things pretty significantly to just because the things that PC does as far as control schemes and all that, and also just as far as power in the machines, and the fact that computers usually have also different aspect ratios. The typical monitor is 16:9. It changes things, and you can't have a one-to-one recreation of League of Legends on mobile. So honestly, I do see Riot's perspective there. I mean, again, I do think there are ways to do decent mobile MOBAs, but yeah, just kind of saying it doesn't. I get Riot's position here. Yeah, and let's see, Mobile Legends is a huge esports team. That's interesting because I don't hear about any of that. It doesn't seem to permeate into the cultural zeitgeist because the big other esport games, the ones that are done on PC, think of things like League of Legends or Rocket League or Overwatch back when that was still popular. All these games, like you do hear about them. You do know that they're around, but I never hear about any of the mobile game esports scenes. It's just so wild to me that they even exist at the scale they do. But then again, any kind of mobile game, a lot of times their monetization model is based on whales. So you don't actually need as strong of a player base as a traditional video game because a small number of whales is the same as a massive number of regular players.
simply going to take no for an answer. In fact, even before asking Riot Games for their permission, they were already developing a MOBA for mobile behind the scenes and released it on that same year in November 2015, exclusively for China. And that game would be none other than Honor of Kings. 10 years later.
Okay, let's see. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Dragon's All the Dokkan Battle, Garena Free Fire, Coin Master, Lineage M, Gardenscapes, Fantasy Westward Journey, Roblox Mobile, Genshin Impact, Fate Grand Order, Puzzles and Dragons, Pokemon Go, Clash of Clans, Monster Strike, PUBG Mobile, Candy Crush, and Honor of Kings. Okay, that is so interesting that Candy Crush is still one of the top games. That's crazy as far as total revenue goes. Although that's still this just goes to show how good. Yeah, I've heard of Clash Royale. I didn't know about. I know they have an esports scene. I don't really know a whole lot about them, but they're still. I do know that a lot of people play that. Yeah, but yeah, these numbers should just go to show you what microtransactions can do if you really know how to actually implement them properly. Like, they are crazy revenue generators, and it's not surprising that so many games companies are trying to implement microtransactions into their game to mixed reception. It's just because when it works, it fucking works.
Honor of Kings is still the highest grossing mobile game of all time.
Yeah, and I will say, based on just the cursory glance I saw, I don't know that Riot had a real case. I mean, and part of it is also because Tencent is in China, so any Chinese game, they don't have the same copyright laws over there, and they don't really care to enforce foreign copyright. So it's borderline impossible to get a Chinese knockoff shut down for real. But also, it seems like it's distinct enough that you probably can't really do anything about it, especially since League of Legends isn't even technically that unique because the MOBA genre started off on with a Warcraft 3 mod, Defense of the Ancient. And then that eventually became its own game, and then Dota 2 came along after that, and then League of Legends also kind of really popularized MOBAs to a wider degree, but again, like, they're not the trailblazers there. So, and welcome, ANCAP, glad to see you. Yeah, so honestly, at the end of the day, I think it's different enough that you can't really claim copyright infringement, although I don't know much more about the game aside from the little glimpses we've seen. And no, this isn't an old video. This is pretty new. Let me see when it actually released. Yeah, a couple days ago.
beating Candy Crush, PUBG, Clash of Clans, you name it, making a whopping $18.6 billion.
And also, I will acknowledge another thing that goes to show just how the mobile market can be. PUBG. They kind of popularized the Battle Royale format on PC and consoles. Now it's very clear that their primary marketplace is mobile, and they're making so much more money now, even though they basically kickstarted a massive genre in video games. Again, they weren't the first Battle Royale, but they were like the ones that made it popular.
The game would prove to be so successful that Tencent would release a non-Chinese version for the rest of the world. It would be called Arena of Valor.
So that's okay. So that actually explains a lot. Well, Arena of Valor is actually just the global version of Honor of Kings, and it seems like it might be even a little bit more distinct from League of Legends than Honor of Kings was. So probably to prevent any kind of copyright issue.
It will be published by G Arena. Now, this game wouldn't really find a lot of success in the West, but would instead find its success in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
It is the biggest mobile game in Thailand, for example, and so it continued to garner an obscene amount of money. Riot Games, on the other hand, would finally release a mobile version of League of Legends called League of Legends Wild Rift in 2020.
Yeah. Well, I will also say it's pretty recent for Riot has really started trying to expand their marketplace beyond just their game, because they've really been kind of branching out into other avenues. Like they've started making other games. They, the shooter Valorant is another big one that they released. I know they even did a couple of single player games. They made I think they made a JRPG or a JRPG styled game. And they released Arcane, which has been highly acclaimed, which I still need to watch Arcane. I've heard very good things about it. So they're really starting to try to expand their appeal beyond just League of Legends. Oh yeah, and they created a CCG as well. I can't remember what it's called, but they've got kind of a Magic the Gathering competitor. And I think they released physical versions of it too. So it doesn't surprise me that this is kind of around the time they finally made a mobile version of League of Legends, because that was the time they were really trying to broaden their horizons.
5 years after Honor of Kings had released exclusively in China. In 5 years, they made $1 billion in gross revenue and
That's
aren't
still really
even
good.
in the top 50 highest grossing mobile games of all time. So if you ever needed proof that the people running Riot Games have maybe like barely 2 brain cells, this is it. And the reason why I told you all this is because this incident involves Arena of Valor. You see, esports tournaments in Southeast Asia always have a form of mobile games, whether it be PUBG or Arena of Valor, and they're taken very seriously. This is where the Southeast Asian Games come in. It's seen as this region's Olympics, and it happens once every 2 years. It features...
Yeah. And I will say another thing is that Asia is just on a institutional level is taking esports more seriously than the West. They're kind of the first to make these things like official. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that this is happening in Southeast Asia as opposed to somewhere in like Europe or North America.
A wide array of different sports, and of course one of these categories involves esports.
That being said, I do think that esports should be separated from traditional sports. There's just enough of a difference that I don't think there should really be overlap in the same events. But it's their event, not mine.
More specifically, Arena of Valor. Now look, as I mentioned in the intro already, when it comes to Arena of Valor, Tokyogurl was a rising star. So much so that Talon Esports, a recognizable name in the Southeast Asian scene, decided to sign her on their team. And I mean, by this point, one could argue she made it, right? What better indicator of success do you need in esports?
And that's another thing I always found very interesting. The, profile pictures, not profile pictures, but, the little pictures they have of the various players. Whatever the esport is, whatever the team is, they always have them doing some sort of weird-ass pose. Everyone has a different pose. They never just stand there and get their picture taken. They're always doing something. Like, I don't know. Something about it just feels very choony.
sports, then getting signed on to a team. But to Tokyogurl, this was still the beginning of her journey, because with that same team, she would go on to compete in the Thailand Women's National Qualifier for Arena of Valor. And guess what? Her role here would be substitute. But she was so damn good that by the end, not only did they win the entire...
Let's see. Mid lane, support, Dark Slayer lane, jungle carry. Okay, so she was just kind of going to sub in for anyone who needed it. I will say, as far as MOBAs go, it is interesting being a substitute, just because while that does kind of indicate that you're maybe not the, you're not the starter for any of the positions, that does kind of imply that you could do any role. And I don't know about this game in particular, but in something like League of Legends, just because you're good at one role doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be good at another. While there is some stuff that transfers over, a lot of it does not, and a lot of the knowledge you need is very role specific. So if she could, if she was known to be able to substitute for any role, that's actually pretty significant.
National Qualifier.
Although in this one she's the carry, so she's not actually the substitute. So okay.
But she went from substitute to carry. One of the most important roles in the game. And yes, by the way.
Okay, again, I don't know how this... my frame of reference is I used to play League of Legends, so I kind of know how that works. One of the most important roles... All 5 roles are really important. They each have their own role. A lot of it depends on what the meta of the game is. Because if you're in a meta where the carry is kind of everything, then yeah, that could be a really important role. However, the roles supporting the carry could be just as important, because the carry needs to be enabled to do what they need to do. And a lot of times you can see the captain is the mid laner. The mid lane is kind of, a lot of times, is like the ring general, essentially, of the esport, because they kind of have access to the entire map, in a sense, where if they want to, they can roam top and bottom if they need to, and they can kind of float all over the place and kind of direct the flow of the game. Jungle, again, if it's based on League of Legends, jungle is kind of a way that kind of influences all 3 lanes and really can kind of direct where that goes and can apply a lot of pressure in that sense, and can secure neutral objectives where, again, I don't know if this game has super important neutrals like in League of Legends, where the Dragon or the Rift Herald or the Baron are really important. Saying carry is like, as if it's like the most important role, I don't know if that's necessarily fair. But it does a lot of times depend on the game and depend on the meta.
They won, which meant that they qualified to represent their country of Thailand in the Southeast Asia Games. That's what the qualifier was for. Team Talon was going to have the incredible honor of representing their country, and Tokyogurl was right there as the team's carry. Not only...
Okay, and yeah, and it is in the current meta. Okay, that's good to know, because I'm not familiar. Again, my frame of reference is League of Legends, and I haven't played League of Legends significantly, aside from like an ARAM here and there, for years now. But, I mean, when it comes to... even in carry dominant metas, a lot of times it's one of those things where, yes, the carry was important, but also they were useless if the other team wasn't doing their job and backing them up. Like, the carry was the one doing all the damage, but they needed to be enabled. Otherwise, if the other team focused them down and the rest of your team doesn't protect you, you're not going to actually be able to do anything, regardless of how good you are.
That though, she was seen as the rising...
Yeah, because also, yeah, and again, in general, carries or DPS, no matter what game you're looking at, the high damage dealing characters are oftentimes the most delicate, so, a stiff breeze will knock them over.
Star of the women's Arena of Valor esports scene, and was being given nicknames like Beautiful Girl or whatever, because she was both beautiful and incredibly skilled at the game. I mean, by this point, we could say that she truly
honestly, the whole
really
team, they're all
made
pretty.
it,
They're all
right?
pretty.
But in reality, this is where things were about to get very real, because she and her team had immense pressure on their shoulders. You see, Thailand has the most gold, silver, and bronze medals in this competition's history.
Crazy.
So they had high expectations to keep up the status quo.
Okay, well, I will say also, their lead is so much also that they could just kind of fail at everything and they'd probably still be in number 1.
I should point out that this ranking isn't the most fair thing because not all the countries on this list were members on day one. In fact, Vietnam, for example, started off as South Vietnam. But you get the point, okay? Thailand is well known to have the most medals in this competition's history. But that was...
and in a lot of places, there's always kind of going to be one dominant area. Like, if you kind of expand past Southeast Asia, a lot of the best esports players are Korean. And I don't know why exactly that is, but, you know, so Korea is kind of the dominant one. Something about the culture, about how popular it is over there. Makes sense that Thailand would be kind of the dominant in their region. They probably just take it a little more seriously than everyone else.
Isn't just it. The members of the Southeast Asian Games take turns hosting the games on their territory. And in 2025, the year her and her team were going to compete, Thailand was going to be the host. Okay. They were representing their own country on their own soil. The pressure couldn't have been higher. And so on December 15th, it began. The Southeast Asian Games 33 Group Stage Women Arena of Valor Tournament.
Okay, yeah, so
countries participated. Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and Timor-Leste. Based on the qualifiers, Thailand was on track to make it to the finals. All they had to do was win against Vietnam. This was their first game in this tournament. So Thailand's team's only goal here was to just defeat Vietnam so they can make it to the finals and guarantee second place.
And with esports, a lot of times the rounds are not like just one game. They're usually going to be best of 3 or best of 5. So that's going to be a factor. That does kind of change a little bit of the dynamic of how this goes on. So I don't know if it's going to be like, you know, something happens in one game and then things escalate and things get more confusing game by game. That can definitely lead to a lot of drama because, you know, it's not like you get a big lead early on and then it's insurmountable like in a traditional sport where, you know, if you're playing soccer and you're 10 goals ahead by halftime, you're probably fucked. Whereas, you know, you can win 2 games in a esports tournament, but that doesn't mean you're going to win the next 3.
If they would win the next match, they would guarantee a gold medal. They were in a very good position here, and they were so close to getting a minimum of top 2. But of course, seeing that they're on their home soil and they're representing their country, they were going for the gold medal.
Okay, and another thing I will mention before, because I know Mujin's going to get into it, but, you know, they mentioned that the whole controversy is because the girl, Tokyogurl, had somebody else playing for her and kind of streaming the game from their device. I already complained about how the fuck the organization didn't catch that. I also don't know how it was allowed to happen in a tournament setting, because the tournament should have their own devices that players are using. And the reason for doing that, you know, if you watch somebody playing League of Legends or Rocket League in a tournament, like in a professional tournament, they don't use their own computers. That's because they first of all want to have everybody on an even playing field. They have it on a LAN connection so that there's no lag or anything like that. But also because people can't install cheating software on a computer that's not theirs. If you know, the first time they're touching that computer is for the tournament, so they're not going to be able to tamper with it. That should be the case for these tournaments for mobile games. They should have their own mobile devices that they're using for these tournaments. How was she even physically able to cheat and have somebody streaming her side of things? Like, that shouldn't be possible. So I think not only did her organization drop the ball, I think the tournament organizers probably dropped the ball as well. Because this is a foreseeable thing. It is foreseeable that somebody would try to cheat, and it would be a way to prevent a significant amount of cheating is to not let people use their own devices.
However, with some of the complications that occurred, I'm sure that some of the team members would have just rather gotten a bronze medal. In fact, no medal, rather than have to go through the embarrassment of having Tokyogurl on their team. All right, so here's the deal. Tokyogurl's suspicious behavior would begin even before the game started. You see, as part of the tournament, they're all given a game phone. They can't use their own phone to compete, obviously. Yeah. When Tokyogurl would receive her phone, she'd ask, "Can I take the phone with me so I can set it up with my own settings?"
No. They should, again, the fact that they let her do this. Okay, so they did mention that they had a phone specifically for the organization. That makes sense. again, letting her install this software on there that would fuck things up. The organizers completely dropped the ball on that. Personally, I think that they should be given the phones in like the green room and told, okay, set it up how you need it set up right now, right before you go on stage. You'll have a few minutes to test it, to play around with it, see if it's the way you like it, do whatever changes need to be done. But you're going to be watched while you're doing it, and you're not going to be alone with the phone. Then you go out, and then that's when we do things. They, under no circumstances, should allow them to be alone with their devices because that's when things can happen. And on top of that, they should have them set up so that they are really, really locked down, like that you can't install anything on the phone without admin permissions, and don't give them the admin permissions. Like, there are ways to prevent this that the organizers just did not do, and that's completely on them.
She was told, of course not, that's against the rules. But that would only be the beginning of her suspicious activity.
Okay,
She'd
so
be
they didn't
acting
let her do
weird
it.
even on the live stream, trying to hide her phone from the camera in front of her, making it seem like there's something on there that would get her in trouble somehow. And then
Yeah, that's so wild. Like, there are ways you could do that more convincingly. Like, if you just kind of laid your arm down in a way that, like, you know, maybe you were covering the phone, that could be a little more believable. But she was obviously trying to cover it up. I mean, granted, hindsight's 2020, but you know.
eventually, live on stream, the Thai coach would catch something weird happening on her screen. And this is when the game would be paused. People initially were confused as to why the pause was happening. Some of her teammates had no idea what was going on, but the stream kept running, and she was being confronted by staff. They noticed that the movements she was making on her phone weren't matching the in-game movements. And what's worse is that the game would continue after this, and her performance would become severely worse. It seemed like after being caught, a switch had flipped. And as the second game was starting, her performance became abysmal. Barely.
Okay. And that's also kind of crazy to me, where, like, I can believe that she would have somebody playing on her behalf, but the fact that the person playing on her behalf was so much better than her is also wild to me. Because, you know, if you think about it, if you look at speedrunning cheating, a lot of times the most prolific cheaters are people who are actually genuinely really good. And one of the interesting facets of that is that when you see like a world record being cheated, it's oftentimes done by somebody who is capable of getting the world record, but they essentially wanted to get it in a more controlled way, where they rather than resetting thousands of times to eventually get the right combination of luck and execution, they just kind of cheat to make it happen sooner. So it's like they still do have the skill, but despite the cheating, the fact that she was so bad at the game, or bad relative to the professional level, that is wild to me, because at least if you're good at the game, you can hide the cheating a lot better.
Able to get a single kill. But at the time, fans weren't even concerned with any of this. They were concerned with the fact that she was acting weird after being caught, making a middle finger gesture to the camera. This is, of course, seen as very unprofessional and not fit for an athlete.
Okay, I mean, and I don't know how the culture is in Southeast Asia, but also, esports is generally, at least here in the West, not considered the same kind of professional spectacle as regular sports. I mean, part of it is the fact that people use their own pseudonyms instead of their actual names. So you've got players named like Balls and stuff like that. So I imagine the standards are a little different, and also gaming culture is different from athletic culture. So this type of behavior is more acceptable in the gaming space than it would be in a sports setting, for the most part, depending on the sport. A lot of sports are different, but I don't know. I don't really care about professionalism in esports.
But I guess this was just her way of coping with the idea that she was caught. So as I mentioned, after she was caught, the games kept going on. Tokyogurl's performance would be abysmal, some of the worst games she's ever played in her career. And Thailand would end up losing to Vietnam 0-3. It was a very embarrassing defeat.
And again, it's worth noting that it's 3 games, not 3 points or anything like that. That's how esports tournaments goes. They do best of 5 games, not an actual scoreboard. So the dynamic is a little bit different.
What's more embarrassing are the extremely quick and ruthless consequences that came her way on the same day.
Okay, actually, and one thing I would be interested in is, because a lot of times seeing a 3-0 sweep in esports doesn't tell the full story. I would be interested in knowing how badly they lost those 3 games. Because it's one thing if you lose 3 games in a row, but it's really close every time. That is different from getting completely blown out, even though the ending scoreboard will say the same thing on both scenarios. So like, it is worth noting. Because like again, one of the things with when I was talking earlier about Victus, the all-female League of Legends Legends team, they were not only, losing every game, they were losing every game just like catastrophically, where they took one tower in their entire career. I think at one point they lost in like 10 minutes. Like, they were blown the fuck out. Again, that's different than if they lost every game, but it was close every time.
Very shortly after Thailand's crushing defeat to Vietnam,
Is
the
he gonna read
Thailand
this?
National Olympic Committee would post this letter on their socials, saying, "Decision on personal penalty for a
Okay, he
Thai
is gonna read
athlete
it.
of the Thailand Arena of Valor women's team, esports event at the 33rd SEA Games Thailand 2025. To whom it may concern, this is to inform you of the decision made during the Arena of Valor women's team match between Team Thailand and Team Vietnam in the winners' final of the esports competition at the 33rd Southeast Asian Games on December 15th, 2025. A Thai athlete, Warasin Nafat, committed an offense under item 943 of the Esports Technical Handbook by using unauthorized third-party software or hardware modification during Game 1 of the match. After further investigation, conclusive evidence was found, which led to the imposition of a personal penalty, resulting in her expulsion from the entirety of the esports competition at the 33rd Southeast Asian Games. The decision is final."
Okay, and that is also interesting where that it's just a personal penalty. First of all, I will say that was a very professional way of handling it. As much as I have criticized them for the way they allowed her to install this software in the first place, I will say again, the way they're communicating this is very, again, it's very good. They're saying, hey, this is what happened. This is the rule that was broken. This was how it was being broken. Here is the punishment as a result. That being said, I find it very interesting that the decision was just to give a penalty to the player, because usually something like this would have knockoff implications onto the team, where they would actually be disqualified as well, even if that was done kind of rogue, because the idea is they want to encourage these teams to police themselves, so that, if one person cheats, that means the entire team is punished for it, essentially, so that they preemptively cut out the cheaters before they actually become a problem in actual tournaments.
The above is for your information and understanding. Thank you and best regards. Signed, the Esports Technical Delegate of the 33rd Southeast Asian Games. So hey, that investigation didn't take long at all, and this letter would serve to be the beginning of a tsunami for Tokyogurl's entire career. But before we get to that,
and depending on what this is going, like, they could actually be having legal implications as well, because like, especially if prize money was involved, or things were marketed on her, destroying your own reputation when you got sponsors can be a problem.
Take a step back. What the hell did they mean when they said using unauthorized third-party software or hardware modification? What exactly did she do? How could you even cheat in a MOBA game? Well, that wasn't clear. The Thailand National Olympic Committee didn't give any specifics, so you had many people theorize, and even news publications theorize, that what she was using was TeamViewer, a program that allows you to remotely control a user's device. But you see, anyone who's used TeamViewer before can attest to the fact that it's laggy as fuck. Yep. The latency would not allow you to compete in a high-level esports tournament, especially in a MOBA. It requires split-second decisions.
Yeah, and again, that's another reason why a lot of these esports events, with the exception of like COVID era, just because you weren't able to really get people together in that time, that's why they're pretty much always done in person on LAN, because that reduces any kind of latency to whatever like the minimum that the system is capable of, as opposed to, even if you are playing a game, like for example, when I used to play League of Legends, I would usually have about 20 milliseconds of latency. If you're playing in Korea, it would be like 9, and if you're playing in a LAN setting, it would be like 0 or very close to 0. The lagginess of something like TeamViewer would be impossible If those slight variances from the difference between 0 to 9 to 20 make a difference, the lagginess of TeamViewer would make it impossible for even the best player to play in a professional setting.
Additionally, many people were wondering how we could even start talking about remote interference when this was a tournament. Aren't tournaments like this usually held on a local network?
Yeah, well, also, I mean, one thing that can happen, and this is something that other esports players have been caught doing, is if you can have somebody looking at what's going on, and usually they wouldn't do it like looking at your screen. It would be kind of if you can get like an earpiece smuggled in, they'll have somebody feeding you. They'll be looking at the entire game. They'll be able to see the map, and they'll be able to tell you kind of what's happening in areas you're not supposed to see. Like if you see here, again, I'm assuming this is going to be similar like League of Legends. So if you're the blue team, and I assume this is the jungler right here, but I'm not sure. You may not necessarily know where the jungler is at this point, although at the top levels, you can usually track where they are because you know how the game flows. But if you have somebody in your ear who's watching, they can tell you, oh yeah, they're at their top side camps. They're clearing them out there. So that is another thing that you can do. Getting information you're not supposed to have is actually pretty significant. So that could be a factor. But I also don't know why she was having somebody remotely connect to her device, because that just seems so much easier to catch.
Well, it turned out that no, actually. Not in the case of the women's tournament. The women's tournament for Arena of Valor was on an online private server. So
Why?
things were starting to get very interesting, to say.
Why would you do that? Why, if you're going to have a server, have it locally, have a local server. Like I can understand if the infrastructure required there to be a server, because that's just maybe a technical limitation they have. But I am sure that the Southeast Asian games could come up with an agreement with Tencent to say, hey, we want to set up our own server of this game for a tournament scenario. They could come to some sort of agreement there. And then not have the server be online, have it be locally hosted. This is so fucking ridiculous.
The least, but no proper conclusions were reached just yet as to how she cheated. In the meantime, though, the tsunami on her career would continue, and Talon would very quickly release a statement saying she is out of our organization effective immediately.
Yeah, if somebody cheats in a tournament, their org is kicking their asses out, like almost certainly. Like yeah, no. So for those watching on the highlights channel, there was just a little bit of bugginess on my stream layout on YouTube that made me think that the stream had gone down, because you know that side of things is a little bit buggy sometimes. So it doesn't seem like there was actually any real problems, but I had to double check to make sure it was doing fine. So whatever I was talking about kind of lost it, but yeah, that's why you saw that jarring cut right there.
Repaying around 9 months of her training costs for the entire duration of when she was under our organization.
Ooh,
now,
yeah,
they didn't specify a number, but around 9 months of training expenses, yeah, that's not a small amount of money, I'm sure.
And it also depends on, were those training expenses including her wages? Because she's getting paid to be in the organization. She was getting paid a salary on top of whatever they spent to train her up to. Because that's another thing, is that generally speaking, solo play in an esport is different from competitive play in an esport, because just the dynamics are different when you know your team and you're able to actually work as a cohesive unit with strategy and all that stuff. You can't really do that in a solo queue environment. So most esports organizations will actually have a training period to get people up to speed before they actually start fielding them out into proper tournament settings. So the question is, does she pay back the pay she got at that time, or is it just whatever expenses they did in the actual training?
Sure. As far as I'm aware, this also included prize money. And of course, seeing all this happen, Arena wasted no time whatsoever and also put out a statement on their Facebook page. In it, they would of course express outrage and announce that they were banning Tokyogurl from participating in anything related to Arena of Valor indefinitely, forever.
Makes sense.
But of course, this tsunami ending her career didn't just involve companies. It also involved her heartbroken teammates, like for example, Give Me a Kiss, the captain for the Talon team, and by that same token, the captain for the Thailand national team. On December 15th, she'd post, "I was heartbroken when I found out, but I'll do my best." Her heartbreak is, of course, in reference to her teammate cheating.
Yeah, and the translations are a little rough, but I think it's probably close enough that it gets the idea across. And yeah, I can't imagine being her teammates at this point, where you dedicate so much to actually being one of the best and really put your heart and soul into it. Because again, esports at the professional level is hardcore. Like, you have to dedicate basically everything to it in order to be the best, to stay on top for the few years that you really can. Because once you kind of get into your late 20s and early 30s, that's when your actual reaction times start to kind of fall off. So if you're on a Twitch-based game, like something that requires Twitch reactions, you're going to start to have to look into retirement at that point. So yeah, she probably put a ton of time and effort and really knuckled down into that, only to have her presence in that space tainted by a teammate who just wanted to take the easy way.
But her saying that she'll do her best was in reference to the game they've still yet to play in the lower bracket final. You see, shortly after the game with Vietnam, Tokyogurl would get benched. The Thailand national team would then bring in the substitute to play against Laos, because they had won against Timor-Leste and therefore qualified to play Thailand in the lower bracket final. The winner of the lower bracket final would face off against Vietnam in the real finals for the gold medal. Thailand would actually end up winning against Laos, qualifying them for the finals against Vietnam. This game against Laos would happen on the next day in the early morning of the 16th.
Okay, so it looks like it's probably... Oh, okay, never mind. I was thinking it was a double elimination thing. It doesn't look like that's what they were doing. Never mind.
However, barely a few hours later, Santi Lothong, who is the president of the Thai Esport Federation, would go live on his personal Facebook page. This is when he would confirm, while breaking down in tears, that the Thailand national team for Arena of Valor would be withdrawing from the competition entirely, even though
that's
they had made it to the finals against
absolutely
Vietnam.
Heartbreaking for, again, to dedicate so much to trying to push a team to the highest levels, only for somebody to fuck it up, and you lose your opportunity due to no fault of your own. That just sucks. I really do feel for the coach and for Tokyogurl's teammates. Like, they really did not deserve this.
This meant that Laos would take their place.
Well, okay, granted, the organization should have caught the cheating before this ever became an issue, so I kind of blame them a little bit, but, it's the people who are actually on the ground who really dedicated everything they had to this. They got fucked over.
And this meant that Thailand was withdrawing with 0 medals in the women's tournament for Arena of Valor. He'd then speak to a newspaper on that matter and say, "I, Santi Lothong, as president of the Thai Esports Federation and president of the Asian Esports Federation, hereby announce that Thailand will withdraw its Arena of Valor women's team from the 33rd SCA Games hosted by Thailand. We respect all regulations, we respect friendships, and we respect the spirit of sportsmanship. What happened went beyond our scope of responsibility, as this is a serious matter. As the host nation, we cannot allow the tournament to continue under such circumstances. We understand that the Thai and Laotian teams still competed this morning. Thank you, Chairman Chan, for not filing a complaint against Thailand or withdrawing from the tournament this morning. That is the spirit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Thank you to the Laotian athletes for taking to the field and showing respect for Thailand."
I think this is actually a really good public response. Like, honestly, last week we watched a video by, I joked to call her female Mujin, who Rima Evenstar. So much of that video was just people just making terrible public statements and just making things worse. This is, I think, a really good public response to a big scandal, where they basically said, "Hey, we fucked up. We're pulling out of this for this reason. We appreciate everybody else involved in this situation. We're sorry we fucked things up for you, and we appreciate the way you have behaved towards us." This is, I think, just an excellent way to handle this. I don't know that he could have done any better than this. Like, honestly, props to him. He knew what he was doing.
As the president of the association, I would like to send my encouragement to the remaining athletes who are still competing. I understand that you have all tried your best. Last night I spoke with Coach Poom. This is truly a very difficult situation, with Thailand being the host country and me as the president of the Asian Federation, who is absolutely responsible for overseeing this tournament. After that, I will speak individually with the athletes in my capacity as the esports manager of Thailand.
And yeah, and honestly, assuming he actually followed through with that and actually did talk to all the people involved, honestly, he seems like he cares. Like, honestly, this guy actually does seem to give a shit about esports. It's not just a job to him. It's not just something to pay the bills that he's trying to milk as much as possible. He seems to actually care about esports, and I can respect that.
So as you can see, this was a very big deal. It was very embarrassing, heartbreaking, and humiliating to anyone that had anything to do with Thailand. After the announcement of them officially withdrawing from the competition, Give Me a Kiss would post another Facebook post that was met with a ton of support, saying, "I'm speechless with sadness. We've all worked so hard for this, towards our shared dream and goal. Last night we continued practicing with the remaining lineup until very late. My heart is completely shattered. Finally, I want to apologize to everyone." You see, this wasn't just about the teammates of Tokyogurl or the organizers. This stretched way beyond to any Thai athlete. In parallel, for example, the men's division of Arena of Valor had won second place. But now, even that was being put into question. Did they cheat? Did they do this legit? They had essentially faced additional scrutiny just because of that incident.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's understandable for people to be skeptical just because if somebody's caught cheating, the question is, how deep does it go? So it really, and especially on such a wide scale, because this was done on an international competition. So it's not like it was done on like a regional tournament where it would just kind of reflect poorly on the organization. This seemed to reflect poorly on the entire, the national esports scene. So like, this is like almost the worst place for it to get caught as far as they're going. And from what I'm seeing, and based on the way Mujin has been framing all of this, it does seem like it is an isolated thing where it was just this one bad actor who was fucking everything up. And, everything else just seems to be incompetence in actually catching it and preventing it ahead of time, which, again, I still think the organization and the tournament organizers are both completely on the hook for this happening, not out of any kind of malice, but out of sheer incompetence. Like, there were so many steps they should have taken that they didn't to prevent exactly something like this. But it does seem like the only actual bad actor was the player herself.
And made it seem like they faked their win. All Thai athletes were beginning to suffer from this. So seeing that this incident had escaped containment like radiation had escaped Chernobyl, and the consequences were spreading shockwaves across the entirety of Thailand as a country and its integrity and its pride, what did Tokyogurl have to say about it? Did she apologize? Did she make amends? Did she try to make it right?
Honestly, I will say, just like I said with last week's video, the best thing to do at this point, probably disappear for a while, wait for cooler heads to prevail, wait for people to stop being angry. Then, honestly, something as big as this, probably not ever going to have a pro career again. Probably not even really going to have a significant place in this space. She probably should just disappear completely. Not like disappear as a person, but like disappear as a public figure. Just, this is probably not salvageable, but at the same time, either way, at least a few weeks to let things cool down. Anything she says will probably just make it worse at this point.
Nope. Because why would she?
Oh,
Instead,
she's gonna make it worse.
She'd be hospitalized immediately after. And the only public statement she'd make would be a reply to a Facebook post criticizing her. Here's what she'd have to say.
Don't do that.
Let me answer. If I had cheated, I would have won a long time ago. To be honest, how could I have cheated? I was playing by myself, but because of the stress and pressure of the game, I panicked. At that time, no one around me knew what was happening, so I was taken to the hospital. I've only just been able to use my phone and my hand is still plugged into an IV drip, so I'm completely unable to share or clarify anything about the fraud. You don't know what I've been through, and yet you're saying that? Anyone in that situation wouldn't know how to react either. As for the middle finger incident...
Man, don't sympathy bait at a time like this. Even if she's actually hospitalized, which she may or may not be, but let's assume she is, like she actually had medical problems, whether they were brought on by the stress of the incident or there was something else going on, kind of irrelevant right now. Even if it's true that she's in the hospital, This is not the time to discuss that. If you're if you're going to say anything, it's going to be a statement, not a reply to somebody. And what you should say is something very either a generic apology, just kind of get it out there, or just an announcement that you're going to be stepping back for a little bit, and just frame it as, hey, I want to think about things, give this matter the consideration it deserves. I'm just going to take some time, make sure when I make a full statement, it's with a cool head and it is rational and not influenced by emotion. That's how you do that. This is the exact wrong way to do that. And I'm also just assuming that Mujin's translation of this is correct, because I don't read Thai. I don't know what any of this says. I don't know their alphabet, so this is just assuming that what he's saying is accurate, but I have no reason to believe he wouldn't be accurately representing this.
I was just joking with the person sitting next to me. When I turned around, the camera was pointed at someone else's face. I was just teasing my friends because I was so stressed at the time. I was so panicked that I fainted, which is why I had to be taken to the hospital. I mean, seriously, what an incredible 10 out of 10 statement. Truly redeemed herself with that one. I mean, who is this Cha-Cha Chilla trying to gain sympathy by telling us she's in the hospital? Look, under no circumstances should someone hurt themselves over anything. But come on,
I agree.
You fainted because you were stressed? Of course you would be, because you were caught.
Yeah, and I will say, again, just because she did cheat in this instance doesn't mean that medical issues are not a thing that could have happened, especially in high-stress scenarios. Honestly, it's believable. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it is believable that she could have actually had medical issues at this point due to the high stress of the situation.
And no one's going to believe that whole middle finger story. You were looking directly at the camera. And as she was trying to defend herself in this stupidly made post, more details would emerge as to how she cheated. So each player was given a phone, right? And since this wasn't played on LAN, this was played on an online private server,
which is a problem.
Each player was given an account to log in with.
Yeah. This is why, if they're going to do a private server, host it locally.
Tokyogurl would then take these credentials and send them to someone else so that they can log in and play for her. She would then install Discord, okay, and get into a call with the person playing for her.
Why do they have the ability to install software on these phones? Why are they not locked the fuck down? They should basically be bricks that play Arena of Valor. They should not do anything else. They should not be capable of phone calls, except they probably can't disable the emergency calling just because of the way phones are designed nowadays, but they should not be able to do anything to these phones aside from manipulate the in-game settings, because obviously you want to be able to play the way you want to play. So they shouldn't be able to have Discord installed on this fucking phone. Also, again, the fact that they made it an online thing and not a locally hosted server, or, again, it's everything about this. The organizers completely dropped the ball on this one. Yes, Tokyogurl is the bad guy for actually cheating, but I put so much blame on the organizers because they did everything wrong. They could have prevented this. They could have stopped her from being able to cheat in the first place. It's ridiculous.
Person would then screen share their game. Tokyogurl would watch the screen share and full screen it, and would then attempt to mimic their movements on her screen, faking the fact that she was the one who was playing. And
that is, oh my god, that is so stupid. You're never going to be able to actually completely mimic that. No, like, you're never going to be able to completely perfectly mimic the little movements of high-level esports play. It's just never going to happen. Also, I think there's a slight delay also, so that they can see that the things are not quite in sync with the other players. This is one of those things where anybody takes even the slightest little look at things, it's going to come crumbling apart. Like, it is so easy to get caught this way. At least if there's somebody like in your ear giving you information, then at the very least, it's easier to hide. This is just everybody, and I agree, this does need to be a more controlled environment. If it was more controlled, the issue of whether or not she would cheat is completely irrelevant because she wouldn't have been able to cheat. I don't really care if somebody wants to cheat, but they're incapable of it. That's fine. But if she was given just a golden opportunity by being able to do this online and install software on this phone. Like, holy shit, why did they let you do that? But then also, their plan was so just mind-numbingly stupid. Everybody involved in this, except for her teammates, seems to be a total fucking moron. I don't understand.
Get this. This wasn't just done for this tournament. This is what she's been doing for her entire career. Because after the first round, after she was caught and had to actually close Discord, her performance would become abysmal. So after her terrible reply, and after the reveal of what she had done to cheat, Tokyogurl would delete her Instagram page, her Facebook page, and her TikTok, essentially wiping all traces of herself online.
Yeah.
As people were still mind blown by how she was able to fake her entire career through using Discord.
And again, how the fuck... The fact that she was able to do this consistently means this does actually seem to be a persistent, like, systemic issue with at least Arena of Valor in the Thai esports scene. Did really every fucking tournament she's ever played in allow her to install Discord on their fucking phones? What the fuck? And also, like, again, that also goes back to, as much as the organizers are absolutely at fault for this, her organization, how did they not see that she's not actually playing during their training segments? Was there nobody in the room? Everything about this is blowing my mind because it's like everything, so many different things have to go wrong here for this to be possible. If one of these cogs was not in the machine, this would have all fallen apart like before she ever got onto a national tournament scene. I am just amazed. It's like the sheer incompetence across the board. Pretty much everybody but the players that are on her team have just failed spectacularly. This is only as big a story as it is because so many people fucked up in so many ways, when one person not fucking up in a spectacular way could have stopped this before it happened.
The Vietnamese newspaper VN Express would interview some players in the Arena of Valor community, including the team captain Give Me a Kiss, to try and understand Tokyogurl's insane story a bit better.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, the whole event was not put together well. But, this is the Southeast Asian Games. This is like the big event of that region of the world. Like, basically, but besides that, there's like the Asian Games and the Olympics. This is a big name tournament. Like, this is a big name event. They should have their shit on lock. They should know what they're doing. It's one thing if it's like some college club hosting a tournament and kind of fucking it up in that sense. That is one thing that's gonna happen. People who don't really know what they're doing are gonna mess up a little bit. It's a completely separate thing if, like, a big organization that, like, they're, again, multinational event, they should know exactly what they are doing. These people are the ones that should be the gold standard. It's like, again, imagine it's like the Olympics were going on, and then they just didn't drug test people. And then everybody was doing steroids because nobody was actually getting caught because they weren't actually doing drug tests. Again, it's one thing if just some small, like, local organization hosted a tournament and then people were able to cheat because they don't know what they're doing. But the Olympics need to be held to a higher standard. I think the Southeast Asian Games should be held to a higher standard. because this is the kind of thing they should be aware of and they should know how to preemptively prevent.
The article would say, Tokyogurl had long been a prominent name in Thailand's Arena of Valor community. Team captain Jomkon Pumsino, known as Give Me a Kiss, said she was widely regarded as one of the country's strongest female marksmen and jungle players. Her live streams and TikTok videos regularly showcased high-level gameplay, leading to her inclusion in the national squad without a formal tryout.
That, man, again, the organization, if they didn't catch it in, like, again, I can understand how you can kind of fake your way through the initiation process and get onto the team. But again, when they're actually training, they should have been able to see that this is not actually her playing. The way she did this with the Discord screen share, this should have come out their first training session.
Head coach Jakapon Palm and several teammates said Tokyogurl appeared to be the strongest player on the roster during preseason practice matches.
Okay.
However, they noted that she rarely attended in-person training sessions and mostly played with the team online.
And that's a problem even if she wasn't cheating. They should know how she plays just on a physical sense. So much about what they're doing physically is actually relevant as far as the competitiveness of this. For example, they might see if she has a specific technique for doing certain movements. Maybe she has a certain bad habit that they might want to look to correct. Maybe, she has like bad posture, and that can actually, over the course of a tournament, having bad posture could actually kind of fuck with parts of your body that will actually make it harder to play properly. Like, there are things that, I feel like as a coach, you would want to see how your players are actually physically playing, not just the ability to make the character move on screen, but how they're actually physically engaging with their phones. So the fact that they just didn't seem to care about that, just like, are they showing a proper duty of care to everything? Like, they should be leaving no stones unturned in making their players the best they can possibly be. Like, I don't get it.
Surprise, surprise, right? Tokyogurl's reputation was further reinforced by Chicken V, a well-known Thai Arena of Valor streamer who had previously helped introduce her to a wider audience. I played solo matches against her and lost badly, Chicken V said. But in hindsight, there were warning signs. She always had someone beside her when playing online. When I asked her to play in person, she often made excuses. Looking back at her old videos, none showed her hands or the screen, only her forehead.
And again, that last one, that criticism, is kind of the thing that only looks suspicious in hindsight, because when you're streaming, like, imagine you were not seeing an anime boy on your screen right now, and you were seeing just a regular person, and I was playing a video game. You would see my upper body because you would see my face. That's how I would engage with the audience. You wouldn't necessarily see my computer monitor or my hands on my keyboard, because for the most part, that's not particularly engaging. But if I was to be revealed as a prolific cheater, then yeah, maybe that could be an issue as well. But yeah, I don't know. I get what he's saying, but also, again, there are so many legitimate streamers who also just stream that way and don't show their hands or their screens.
So you see, there were signs, but these people chose to give her the benefit of the doubt. And yet she completely used their trust and threw it in the garbage. However, one question remained. Who the hell was behind her gameplay? Who was this insane player that allowed her to fake her entire career?
Yeah,
well, and you won't believe this, but it just so happened that Tokyogurl's boyfriend had been an ex-esports player for Arena of Valor.
Oh, I know. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense, but also I think it's so funny that I for a second thought that he was going to be an active player, and that would have been so hilarious to me. But yeah, I mean, there are people who can play at absurdly high levels. You don't necessarily need to be an esports level player to be able to, or an esports professional to play at an esports level. Like, there are some people who are just absurdly good at the various video games, and that's how, like, boosting services ended up coming, because some people just know how to win even though they never actually competed at the professional level. But oh boy, like, honestly, if anyone is going to fake an esports performance, it probably would be a former esports pro, so that does make sense. But Oh boy.
Oh, absolutely crazy. No one would have guessed that. So people theorized that it was him. However,
And
no
again,
one.
this just goes okay, completely unrelated. This just goes to what I was saying earlier about how they always have esports people doing these weird ass poses. Like, I don't know why this is a trend. I always thought it looked really silly, and every esport does it for some reason. And what makes it worse is because these are people who are professionals at video games, a lot of them aren't like physically that impressive as far compared to like an athlete, because an athlete's going to be in really good shape. They're going to generally have a lot of muscle, or they're going to have a good physique. Like you don't have like skinny guys like this playing basketball so much, or football. So I think when it looks like a nerdy guy like this, which again that's not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think he's ugly or anything, but when you have a nerdy guy like this doing these weird poses, I think it just makes it look even weirder.
Had any concrete proof, and no one had come out to reveal this. That would be, of course, until a couple weeks would pass by after the incident, because on January 2nd, the remote player would finally confess. To almost nobody's surprise, on January 2nd, Cheerio would come out and confess that he was the player playing remotely for Tokyogurl. He confessed this by posting a statement on his personal TikTok account. An
Fucking
account that
cat.
still, even after posting the confession, has a donation link in the bio.
Oh boy.
I mean, how shameless can you really be? The statement was...
I mean, okay, to be fair, he probably had that donation link from beforehand, and he just didn't end up removing it, and I don't think he was under any obligation to remove it. I don't think that donation link connects to what he's doing here, so I'm not going to criticize him for that.
of course, be in Thai and would comprise of 2 pages. Here's what it had to say. Hello, I'm Cheerio, and I want to clarify the issues that occurred during the SEA Games 33 and other tournaments where there were suspicions of substitutions in many matches. I acknowledge that this is true as reported by the press. I've had time to reflect. I regret what I have done, and I want to offer my sincere apologies to society. Okay, this is a bit roughly translated, but you'll get the point, I'm sure.
Society.
I take responsibility for what happened and accept all criticism and consequences without any justification. I apologize to those affected by my selfish actions. I apologize to all Thai people for bringing shame to the country. This incident is an important lesson in my life. I will use it to reflect on myself, improve, and make amends. I promise that I will not let anyone else be harmed or let the country lose its reputation because of my actions again. Finally, I would like to apologize to everyone once again. I apologize to Mr. Santi Lotong, president of the Thai Esport Association. I apologize to the Talon women's team. I
have stuff to
apologize
say,
to the
but I'm gonna
other
wait until
women's
this
teams
is
that
done.
lost their chance. I apologize to everyone involved in all the tournaments I participated in, and I apologize to everyone who was disappointed with the results. I decided to speak out late because the public outcry was so strong and so rapid that I wasn't prepared and didn't know how to respond. I apologize to everyone. I'm currently in a place where I'm not ready to live stream. When I get home, I will live stream to apologize and again explain what everyone wants to know.
Honestly, I think that's a pretty good apology, all things considered. He basically took it on the chin, completely, owned up to everything and apologized, made no excuses, didn't try to deflect anything. He just said, I was wrong. I was wrong for this reason, and I'm sorry. As far as the apologies go, that's actually a pretty good one, I will say.
So look, already way better than the statements that Tokyogurl made.
Yeah.
But still, a lot of questions remain unanswered. And I guess when he eventually live streams, maybe we'll get to know. And according to this article by the Vietnamese publication known as Bao Moi, Cheerio is highly regarded in the Thai esports scene. Specifically for Arena of Valor, he's seen as a very skilled player. Interestingly enough, someone of his skill and playstyle stood more to lose than Tokyogurl by doing.
It depends. It said he was a former esports pro, so doesn't seem to be competing at the professional level now, so he probably makes his income by streaming, which that's a thing that you do. Even a lot of former esports pros, they'll just start streaming and that'll be their main income stream. Oftentimes, being a streamer is more lucrative than being a professional if you're good enough, just because streaming just has a higher potential cap for how much you can make. So honestly, if he actually still has the skills, which it seems like he does, because he was the one who was the skill behind Tokyogurl. Honestly, once the scandal blows over, I don't think he really has all that much to lose unless he gets banned from the game, like he gets a personal ban, because that could actually end up kind of fucking him up. Where if he can't then transfer his audience to a different game, that's when he can actually suffer real consequences. But short of a ban from the game by the developers, which can happen. Like I know years ago in League of Legends, Tyler One got a personal ban where basically anytime he created an account and Riot found out about it, they would ban it. So there was a period of time where he would create new accounts, play them until they got banned, and then get do it all over again. But yeah, short of that happening to him, I don't think he actually has all that much to lose.
This. So that's one of the questions that's unanswered. Why did he do this? Purely because he was her boyfriend, or was there something else at play? Either way, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter, because the Thai Esports Association immediately would announce that they're taking action not just against Tokyogurl, but now against Cheerio after he admitted being the remote player.
Yeah, and again, I don't know the Thai legal system, so I don't know exactly what liability they potentially incurred upon themselves. So hopefully Mujin will go into that.
This is where Santi Latong would confirm that he'll be pursuing legal action against both individuals to the fullest extent, saying that Cheerio's admission will expedite the investigation process by allowing communication companies to check the IP addresses of the offenders for evidence, with authorities affirming that legal proceedings will continue until fully resolved.
I will say, I also would not be surprised, again, assuming the Thai legal system works in any way comparably to the American system, I would not be surprised if they kind of apply pressure until one of them flips on the other, and they get one of them will probably get a very generous settlement offer, and one of the conditions of the settlement will be to cooperate in the lawsuit against the other. That's how it goes a lot of times in the US. I would not be surprised if that's how it goes here, but again, that's assuming things about the Thai legal system that I just don't have the information of.
And by the way, just as an update, yes, they've confirmed that the IP address was different. So it doesn't take a genius to understand that this couple will be facing a lot of headaches in 2026, and the year has barely just started. But speaking of headaches, the ones who actually have to suffer through them for a long time now will be anyone, more specifically any woman looking to compete for Thailand.
That is true.
Or you know what? In esports in general. This is well explained by Frozen Kiss.
And before I get into this, that is also another factor that is important, where these kind of scandals, while they're kind of funny and they're interesting to hear about, they do actually, it's like the thing is when female esports players are so underrepresented as is, just because there are fewer women playing at that level, because they just don't have that type of hyper-fixated focus on the game that some men have. Like, I think it's a rare quality to have in general, but it is rarer in women than it is in men. And it's not a good or bad thing, it's just the way that I think our brains differ. But the thing is, because women are already an underrepresented category in esports, when you see these kind of situations where, because when these cheaters pop up, there are a higher percentage of the female esports scene, it makes things look so much worse for the rest of them than if a cheater is exposed for men. Because, most esports players are men, so when a man cheats, it doesn't reflect on the entire esports world, because most of the esports world is men. People don't have that association. But when things like this happen in the female side of things, it raises eyebrows of all the legitimate female esports players who are actually good and actually doing things the right way. Completely fucks them up. Kind of like with, again, I'll reference Vayvictus again, where there are actual women who are good at playing the various games they play, but when a all-female team who are just not that good get pushed onto the professional level and have to play against people who are that good, and they get blown the fuck out, it creates the false impression that women just suck at video games, when that's not necessarily going to be the case all the time. There are going to be women who do suck, and there are going to be fewer women at the upper echelons of esports than men, but when you have these players you have these high-profile instances of people not living up to the standards, it just looks bad on the people who are actually trying and actually want to get there on their own merits. And that's also happening here, and I think that's just an absolute shame. I do feel for anybody who actually had some negative consequences for this woman's behavior.
One of the biggest Thai female content creators who also used to be an esports athlete. She'd make this post on Facebook saying, "I'm speechless with disappointment. Why would someone cheat to make the national team? Even in smaller tournaments, it's unacceptable. Other women's teams that are serious, dedicated to training and competing have been developing for so long. This Southeast Asia Games was watched by many, and there was a growing desire to see a proper women's tournament established, and then it all fell apart. The problem of substitutions never goes away, no matter how many years pass."
Yeah, and that's also, and it's one of those things where I do think actually, if depending on how it's handled, having women's divisions in various industries offers things that the male versions don't always have. And I think it's something that should be generally explored, I think. Like, for example, in professional wrestling. Women's wrestling is different from men's wrestling. But when it's pulled off, it's very exciting. Like, that's one thing I think the WWE has done well recently, is that their current women's division is just leaps and bounds better than back when it was still the era of the Divas. Because, they were fun, but, like, they didn't really have the same level of performance and it's not the same experience that it is now. Or like how you would see the Joshi wrestling in Japan, where they really are, those women are fucking hardcore. But it provides a different experience than the men's division, but they complement one another. I think the same thing could be true in esports. It would be interesting to see how women play the game differently from men because, women's and men's brains are wired a little bit differently. I imagine different metas and different strategies and different trends could arise that would be really interesting to talk about. But, again, things like this just fuck it up for all the ones who actually give a shit.
Honestly, I'm so ashamed that a player we used to compete with is accused of cheating at a national level. How will people view Thai female players now? Why would someone dare to ruin our country's reputation and the dedication of others? It feels so unfair. I feel so sorry for the other teams that worked so hard but lost like this. It's such a waste of opportunity. So as I mentioned before, this wasn't just about this team in particular, or Tokyogurl in particular. This was about all Thai athletes. And I mean, think of how demotivating it is to be a team that had lost to Talon in the national qualifiers. Like, you lost out on the opportunity of representing your country because someone on the enemy team had their boyfriend playing for them. That's crazy. It's so unfortunate. And based on Frozen Kiss's post, she said the problem of substitutions never goes away no matter how many years pass. This means that this isn't the first time that a female athlete faked her entire career in esports. It's just that no one managed to fake it until they had reached the national team. It's only normal to be furious if you're Thai, and I mean, it's only normal to be furious if you're a woman in general.
Yeah, and that is also another thing. That's another reason I think I've gone pretty hard on the organizers and the organization, because, again, cheaters are to be expected in any competition. That's going to happen. People are going to try to cheat the system because they value the result more than the actual victory. So I do understand, like people, I think, in general understand that. Like, nobody is surprised when somebody takes steroids in a regular sports competition. The thing is, these need to be caught before they get to these levels. Like, it is different when somebody gets caught at, like, the collegiate level juicing for football versus when they're in the NFL playing in the Super Bowl. If they get caught juicing, then that comes a lot more of an issue at that point. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is that she got so far and nobody caught it because the way she cheated was so fucking stupid. The moment anybody takes the tiniest look at what she's doing, it falls apart. The organization should have caught that, like, in their first training session. Even though, she said she mostly attended online, but that does imply that she did attend some in-person shows. But so, like, how does that happen? Like, how did they not see it the first time they saw her play in person and saw that, things didn't necessarily line up? And the organizers also just did not have things locked down the way they should have been locked down. I am still just dumbfounded that the phones were not basically bricks that played Arena of Valor. They should not have been allowed to install anything on there. And honestly, the phone settings themselves probably shouldn't have even been adjustable. Like, they shouldn't have been able to change anything about the phone itself except the volume. Like, or if they did want to change something for whatever reason, like, then get the organizers to do it for you. Like, it is, the organizers could have prevented this outright, and the organization should have caught it well ahead of time. Honestly, I think I am more upset at them for dropping the ball so hard than I am at the woman for cheating, because cheating is to be expected. That is a thing people will do. It is not surprising when somebody tries to cheat, and when somebody even gets really egregious about cheating. When sheer incompetence allows it to get to this level, that I think is far more egregious than the actual cheating itself. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Honestly, I hope that the country's reputation can recover, and I hope that better measures are taken to make sure that everyone's playing fair in the future.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They had too much faith in people. You can't have faith in people at the highest levels of competition, because there's always going to be somebody who's trying to cheat the system. Always. It doesn't matter how good people are in general, and I do believe that most people do things honestly for the most part. You're not trying to do this to prevent most people's bad actions. You're doing it for the 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million person who's going to try to slip things by. That's who you're preparing against. It's just like, again, when I wear my seatbelt in my car, or why I have a fire extinguisher in my apartment hanging up on the wall right now. I don't have that fire extinguisher for the 2 years I've lived in the year and a half that I've lived in my place and not had a fire. I have it for the potentially one time out of hundreds or thousands of days that I do have a fire, and I deal with it before it becomes an issue. Same thing with cheating. Most people are not going to cheat. Some people are. It's the some people you need to care about. That's the ones that you take preventative measures for. It's just ridiculous that they were so lackadaisical about the actual security and integrity of their event. It is, I am actually completely dumbfounded that such a high-level organization, such a big company, failed in such a spectacular manner.
This was an absolutely crazy incident, and I hope that this is the last time we hear of it. And for you watching, yes, you take this as a lesson. You can fake being something that you're not. Hell, you can probably do it for a long time, but eventually it'll catch up to you one way or another. The best you can do for yourself is to live a life full of authenticity while also making sure that you have no regrets. Don't take out a $50,000 loan to show off to people that don't matter on Instagram. And definitely don't somehow convince your boyfriend to play for you on a pro level. I mean, what the fuck? Anyway, thank you so much for watching until the end. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to use the code Mujin on GamerSupps for 10% off. You can do this on any of their tubs, and soon they'll be releasing their own version of creatine powder. Bro, this packaging looks insane. I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, I gotta say, that's one thing. I need to try GamerSupps at some point. I've heard good things about them. And honestly, if I try their stuff and end up liking it, they might be kind of the first company I actually look to maybe see if I can get a proper affiliate code for, because I don't know, that seems like it would be a good way to kind of ease myself into that side of things. I've heard good things about GamerSupps. I'm interested in trying it, and I do fucking love their marketing. They're hilarious. So yeah, let me hear what he has to say.
Should be soon, because I'm gonna have a big sponsor announcement in that one. Stay tuned. I love you so much, and please take care. Mwah.
Okay, so yeah, that would be that was a really good video by Mujin, our female, not Mujin, but male Rima. Okay, if I call Rima female Mujin, I gotta call Mujin male Rima. So that was a good video overall. I actually really liked that. I had no idea about this situation ahead of time, so I was learning. This is a learning process for me. I really enjoyed it. And I feel like I had a lot to say about that. I loved crashing out over the incompetence of her organization and of the organizers of the Southeast Asia Games. It's always fun. It was a controlled crash out, so it's not like I was actually upset, just having fun with it. But yeah, for those watching live on stream right now, the link is once again in the chat. For those watching on the highlights channel, the link will be in the description below. Please do give Mujin some love. We always appreciate the original creators on this channel, because without their hard work, these videos you're watching would not exist. And of course, Mujin always delivers, even though, I've never reacted to one of his videos, but I've watched him for a while. He doesn't miss. So for those watching on the highlights channel, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you next week for another video. Later.